Hello, and welcome to another video. I'm going to explain why does PvP feel so unbalanced right now. There's many reasons. I'm going to have a video play in the background of just a game showcasing some of the issues in PvP. So getting into one of the main issues that people are not realizing is about how gearing actually matters a little bit more this expansion than it probably ever has before, because one, they've sort of quote-unquote removed bolster, even though it's there, and the bolster is not very good, even if you are taking advantage of it. So for example, if you're using 320 Conquest gear, which I'll show you a picture of that, and then I'll also show you the 306 gear. This is max power version because I have R2s and R20s in my 306 gear, which is different than the average 306. As you see, the stat difference isn't that crazy. It's a lot more endurance, but do keep in mind 320 Conquest gear is endurance heavy. It's meant to be that way. So even if you had a good gear, so for example, let's say 330 and 300 item level Augs, which Augs do not work in PvP, so keep that in mind, neither do crystals. I expect them to eventually fix that. I have been asking for over a month now for them to fix it. I hope that it will be soon, because every class will feel a lot better in PvP once augments start working. Going back to having 330 gear and 300 item level Augs, you would have to spend a lot of your budget to reach last expansion's crit range, right? But most players are not going to be able to get 300 item level Augs, let alone 330. And they're probably not going to bother because, 326 is the cap for PvP, so why get higher, Well, the bolster, or, quotations bolster, cap is actually not working, so 330 gear is currently better than 326 in PvP. However, augments don't work, so it's a toss-up. I don't know what to say about that. But moving on, because our crit rate is so bad, average player has about 1500 to 3000 crit. That's anywhere from 27% to like 34%, maybe a max. That's like, you're missing about 10% on average crit compared to last expansion. And because there's a lot of crit passes tied on to some classes, they're performing really well, and that's mostly because they don't feel the crit loss as much as other classes. This inherently just makes, some classes a lot better, and even with good gear, some classes are still, like, quite a bit far away from each other. So for example, if you look at the Arse leaderboards, there are some actual issues with classes. It probably will take a bit for them to actually fix this, but do keep in mind every class is still relatively effective in PvP. Assassin's very squishy, but like in general, for example, Arsenal's parsing pretty low compared to some of the top parsers, but it still does really effective damage because it has armor pen on pretty much all of its, primary burst moves, right? The Rel Shot auto crit with a 5x damage boost, and the fact that if you pop it with gas, you have 100% armor pen on that Rel Shot. That thing hits really hard, like really, really hard. However, I do think, this is a side note, I think they should go back to Heat Seeker auto crit because the uptime would be better for Arsenal overall, and it would help Arsenal do more damage overall. But moving on from that, tacticals, and pretty much a lack thereof. There are some classes that don't really have any good tacticals to use right now, and then there are some classes that have a tactical that does 2000 to 3000 of its DPS. This is a real problem, and I really hope that they tackle this soon, because the amount of tacticals that we have right now is just not really good. And some classes are just like, well, what do I take? Well, I guess I'll take Taunt Stun, or I'll take AoE TD, which is actually really good for AP, but the fact that you have to use Flame Sleep is really awkward. It should really be Shatter Slug, but that's neither here nor there. I'll briefly cover companion buffs and Datacrons. Datacrons are more of a min-max thing. It's not the end of the world if you don't have all of these, but basically this just increases your overall damage, because you can get a mastery, but there's also increased endurance that you can get. I do recommend trying to get these, but again, it's not completely necessary to have them all. Then on top of that, you have the class companion buffs, which if you're a older account, you probably already have all these done. But if you are a new account, definitely look into this and do this. It is relatively quick. Now let's go into a bigger and more broad issue with PvP. Stealthers. There's not something inherently wrong with stealthers, but people that stay in stealth for the entire match only come out to execute people or hide as a stealther for the entire game and don't move and AFK, and especially if you're guarding a node as a stealther and you do not move, that's how you get caught. Somebody goes over there in stealth, they see that you're staying still, they see you once when they pass by, they'll see you again because you're still standing there, they'll sap you and somebody else can cap. So immediately you lose the node because of that, because you're not moving around. But not to even mention that if you're sitting in stealth for the entire game, you're not contributing to the fight. So the players on your team have to play at a disadvantage, a number disadvantage, which is actually pretty impactful. Everybody needs to understand that dying in PvP is just part of PvP. It's what's supposed to happen. If you're not dying in PvP, that means that either your team is just so much better than the other team and you are just better, or you're playing something so overpowered and the enemy team is playing something really underpowered. It's not supposed to be where you're just invincible, right? There's some situation that it is, but you gotta remember, a lot of people just give up after they've died once and they do not continue to play. If everybody continued to play, eventually those players will die. Which brings me to the impact of a player. Even if you're not great and you know that, you being there will allow another player to do more because you're there. They have to do double the work rather than just killing that one person. They have to kill two people. That makes a lot more time for that one player. Let's say this player is good, to do a lot more. Which sort of brings to the topic of the power of one is not greater than the power of many. Same thing that goes for real life. That if you have somebody to support you, since it's 8 versus 8, doesn't matter how good they are, as long as they're there, you will feel that impact. It doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as you're there, it helps alleviate the pressure on them. Then going into another big issue is that objectives aren't actually complicated. Combat is, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn about combat. For example, resolve is the #1 thing that I recommend every single player in the game to learn before they ever want to care about objectives. Objectives are very simple and straightforward, so you can learn those, and then once you understand the resolve system, it'll allow you to then use your CC correctly, because so many people use it incorrect. And then understanding how important is mid. Most maps, especially Ancient Hypergate, since there's orbs in the middle, if you can keep mid control, you can deny most of the points to the enemy team. And on top of that, you're getting kills. In most maps, you do get points for kills. I also do have a guide on PvP combat, key bindings, and other things to help you improve as a player. And I also have a guide on how to get PvP gear a lot faster. I will link all those into the description. And last thing I want to leave you guys with is to keep a positive attitude. Do not just give up the match the moment that you died once. Dying is normal. It's a part of PvP. It's supposed to happen. It's player versus player. It's not go click the blue objective and that's all you gotta do. There is conflict. You have to deal with it. And when you're not having fun, please do consider your fellow PvPers and don't make their experience worse. And don't abandon them to AFK. Everybody would have a much better time. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.